I want you to move from overwhelmed by information to confident in what really matters. I want to help you move from being unsure towards direction and purpose in your healthcare. I want to introduce you to health experts. I want to let you in on tough conversations on women's health. I want to give you a place where you can lean in and learn how to take care of yourself. Let's transform your health. Let's get clear on your goals. This is Women's Health Unplugged. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Robertson, naturopathic doctor.
Before we begin today's episode, I want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by the Confident Clinician Club. The Confident Clinician Club is my online education platform for naturopathic doctors and other integrative and allied health professionals who have goals of becoming not only better educated on how to be an evidence-based practitioner, but who also want to save time in their practice by being given evidence-based protocols for conditions that they see in their patients every day. The Confident Clinician Club membership opens twice per year, with our summer intake happening very soon. If you want to learn more about how to become one of my clinicians and join our group of over 240 practitioners who are learning about the standards of practice and the very best evidence-based protocols for conditions such as miscarriage, PCOS, perimenopause, and others, then I want you to download my free guide, which is about how to navigate PubMed and save you time. It's called our PubMed Hacks. You can find the link to download this free resource in the show notes of today's episode. You can also find us at theconfidentclinicianclub.com, where you'll be redirected to join our waitlist so that when our session opens for this next round of enrollment, that you get one of our coveted spots.
Welcome to another episode of Women's Health Unplugged. I am excited about this episode because I'm chatting with someone who I've decided that I probably should have been friends with for a long time, and yet I'm actually just meeting her right now. I'm joined by my guest today, Julie Cole, who is the creator, founder of Mabel's Labels. I have been following Julie for such a long time that I feel like we're buddies, even though, like I said, we're just meeting today. But it turns out we're from the same hometown. We even went to the same high school. And so maybe we have probably passed each other a million times, Julie. And then today's just the first day we're actually chatting.
Well, that's probably true. I would venture to guess, though, that you were several years behind me in high school.
And those years make a huge difference when you're in high school. Do you remember that when someone was like 1 or 2 years ahead of you? That was like decades away in that time of your life. Whereas right now we're probably a lot like closer than we were then. But I'm excited for us to have this conversation, Julie. And one of the things I've always kind of admired about sort of watching you and your life from afar, like one is your role as an entrepreneur. You are a problem solver. And you also, from my perspective as an outsider, don't seem to be afraid to take problems head on in all areas, whether they're social problems, whether they are business problems. And so I'd love to be able to chat a little bit about that. But you also are a major mom role model. You have 6 kids.
I sure do. I don't need reminding, Dr. Jordan.
And it's funny because as I was about to hop on this podcast, I said to one of my staff members, like, I'm talking to Julie Cole today. And I was like, and what would you ever ask a woman who had 6 kids? Just because I was curious. And then we basically were like, yeah, we basically would ask her like how the fuck she did that. So I want you to kind of introduce yourself, Julie, because you've got a long story, and I want you to kind of set the stage for like where you are right now as your role model for women. So walk us through how we got to this point.
Okay. So, hey, great to be here. I'm glad we finally connected. Seems like it makes a lot of sense. Don't know what took us so long, but here we are. So yeah, I'm Julie Cole. I'm the co-founder of Mabel's Labels, a company that I started with 3 other women 18 years ago. I'm also a parenting blogger. And as you mentioned, I'm a mom of 6. Started Mabel's Labels 18 years ago for a couple of reasons. The first was that there was a product missing from the market. We were all young moms using masking tape and permanent marker. And we thought, we can do better than this. We're tired of losing our kids' belongings. We're tired of ending up in the lost and found. And there really wasn't a good product out there. So we created a really durable label, dishwasher, microwave safe, super cute, highly personalized, that sort of thing. So that was reason number one. Reason number two was that at the time, my then 3-year-old, who actually had 2 younger sisters already at the time, was diagnosed with autism. And, I often joke that I'm a recovered lawyer because that's what I was in my previous life, pre-Mabel. And I just didn't think that the traditional workforce was going to suit my family anymore. I wanted to be able to set up an educational program for my kiddo. I wanted to be able to advocate for him. And things were pretty busy on the family front anyway. So that's when I went to my co-founders and said, hey, maybe now's the time for us to do our thing. And they agreed, and we have not looked back. And that's where we are today.
And so that story started when you had 3 kids, and then your family has grown. Well, it's exploded.
Yeah. Had a few more. That's right. So now we're holding steady at 6. I'm getting older now, and I actually ended up with 6 C-sections, which is always a little crummy. But I will tell you that my youngest now is 12. So I've got loads of teenagers. I've got 3 at university. It's all getting so much easier. And I think about through this pandemic, and I think about all you young mamas out there, and I'm not entirely sure how you did it, because if this were 15 years ago, I would have gone crazy. But right now I've been able to manage it quite well because my kids are fairly independent. Although I do have my youngest is like an ADD, ADHD guy. So sometimes staying focused on Zoom all day is a bit of a, challenge. But hey, we all get that. We all have our things we're dealing with. But for the most part, people often tell young moms, oh, you wait, bigger kids, bigger problems. It's way easier. I get sleep. When I have a cup of tea, it's still hot. Like I get to sit down when I eat. I don't just have crusts for lunch. So yeah, it's pretty good.
That's great. It's funny. My son is 12. So my oldest is 12.
Oh,
and so
okay.
I feel like I'm just starting to come into that, different problems. Right. But it's that it's so much different than I think I blacked out during those first few years, especially running a business and having young kids. I really don't know. And so I'm curious, I would love to talk about what your experience has been like that collision of entrepreneurship plus motherhood. I think there's probably lots of lessons to be learned there that are applicable to people in both of those hemispheres, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur who's not a mom, or if you're a mom who's not an entrepreneur, there's some similarities between what is necessary in order to thrive in those areas that I think are have a significant overlap.
For sure. And, I found being both, having, being a mom, running a business. I mean, I've just had to really make sure that I mind my boundaries. I have to make sure that I train for independence. And I mean, for my kids, I want them to be independent, but also staff. You don't want to be micromanaging staff. There are some a lot of similarities, really. And, just making sure that I feel like my job is to set everyone up for success, and it takes good leadership at home, and it takes good leadership at work.
And so I'd love for us to start just sort of talking about that self-care piece a little bit, because I think that is such a common conversation and theme when we're talking about parenting, when we're talking about the pandemic, is this conversation around self-care. And so I know before we hopped on air, you said, I got something interesting to say about that. I've got a unique perspective on self-care. So why don't we kind of lead with that? And I want to sort of get into some of the actual strategies that you've used over the years. But what are your thoughts on self-care? Tell me about that.
So I think that I do think self-care is important. It's that whole thing. If you're not well, if mama goes down, everyone's going down, right? You need to be you have to be well physically, you have to be well emotionally, mentally, all of those things. You want to feel good if you're running a company and you're running a household, right? Everybody's going to thrive if you're thriving. So self-care certainly does have a role. Now, where I've found it kind of almost like a funny and judgmental space is that my idea of self-care doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's idea of self-care. I can remember back in the day, like, yeah, you know what? I was pregnant with my fourth kid and I was making labels in a basement till 2 a.m. And I was getting up with 3 kids at 6 a.m., momming all day long, getting back in that basement and making labels and whatever. Like that was, and people were always like, you never have me time. You never, and you know what? Like I felt like I was fine. Like I felt like I did. My idea of me time just looked different. Like my idea of me time is like, I don't really need to go get my nails done or flip through a magazine. Like one time somebody bought me a massage because they thought it would be nice and relaxing. And I actually ended up just being a little stressed out because I was thinking about all the things I could be getting done in that hour. And so that didn't work for me. So, but my idea of me time was like, you know what, talking to you, Dr. Jordan, like this is my idea of me time. My idea of me time would be maybe like going and watching one of my kids play hockey and not having to chase a toddler around the arena, actually getting to sit and watch my kid play hockey. So I think, a lot of people are like, oh, you never have me time. And I'm like, I do. It's just not how it's traditionally defined. And I think, we can't let people project what they think our needs are onto us because we might have different needs or they might just look different. And that's okay. And I really learned that lesson with my family as well. I remember I felt like I was getting a lot of judgment around alone time with each of the kids. You have 6 kids. How the heck do you do alone time with each of them? And I was kind of like, oh, I guess I don't really. And then I started thinking, gosh, how much therapy am I going to be paying for later? Because I'm not giving these kids their one-on-one time. So then I came up with this big idea that I was going to do this thing called a different kind of date night. And every Friday night, one parent would do something together, and then the other parent would stay with the other 5. Because then they'd have this one-on-one time that everyone told me that they needed so badly. So I sat the children down and I said, look, this is what we're going to do. And I told them the plan. And one child put up a little hand and said, can I bring a brother or sister along on my date night? And I was like, oh, I don't think that's how that's supposed to go. Again, I'm trying to avoid paying therapy later. And then another kid said, can my whole family come on my date night? So, I realized I was trying to project what other people are telling me, what my family needs onto my family. And guess what? I'm the boss. I know my family better than anyone. I know what their needs are. If I had a kid who I'm like, something's up, I'll be like, dude, I'm doing the groceries. Hop in. I want you to come with me. We chat in the car. Tuck in. Dude, you said something at night or at dinner tonight that made me kind of go, that something might be on your mind. Can we talk about that? So I know the times to go and have these conversations. It doesn't have to be so contrived as I tried to make it. And I did that because I let other people tell me what my family's needs are. So, I've made a rule of not letting other people define what me time looks like for me, what self-care looks like for me, or what my family needs are, because I'm the big boss lady. I know those things best.
You think that comes from, Julie, and not just thinking about your example, I think that women can really relate to that sentiment, right? That they've heard that something is good for their family. And so they're going to come hell or high water, try and incorporate it into their family life. And turns out it's, maybe doesn't work. Do you think that we've lost that ability to kind of trust ourselves in making those decisions?
I think so. And I'm sorry if I'm contributing to the problem. I'm a parenting blogger and I speak, I'm a parenting contributor on TV and I do sorts of things like that. I'm writing a book right now. But the thing is, we have to, I think it's so great to take on board. I never get offended when people give me advice. I know people are like, if my mother-in-law tells me one more thing, I'm not that. I'm like, bring it. I can take it and I can decipher and figure out and weed it out. But at the end of the day, I haven't lost my instincts. I have guts. And if we listen to our guts, they usually know. And I think sometimes we have to remember and be confident and remind ourselves that we know what we're doing. And it's funny, I think the turning point for me was, it was when I had 2 little ones. I must have had 3 little ones because Mac had just been diagnosed with autism. And I was at the park. So I had a brand new baby. Posey was probably, a year and a half, and Mac would just turn 3. And Mac, because of his autism, didn't come to me for comfort. And I always just thought he was tough. I just thought he was tough. And then Posey came along, and I'm like, every time she falls down, she's like, mommy, me. And I was like, oh, this kid's a wimp. Meanwhile, she was actually just neurotypical, and that's what kids do. They look to their parents for comfort. So I was trying to treat Mac and train Mac to come to me for comfort. So if he fell at the park, I would run over and be like, baby, you need mommy to kiss it better for you. Where does it hurt? Oh, let's get a Band-Aid. And then if Posey fell down, I'd look the other way and pretend I didn't see it because she was fine. And I remember thinking all the other moms at the park must think I'm so terrible because I'm ignoring Posey when she falls down and I'm over responding and being dramatic with Mac. But what they didn't know was that I knew what my kids' needs were best. Posey needed to be ignored, total drama queen. Mac needed to learn that you go to your parent when you're hurt. So I was doing what my family needed, but from just some outside perspective, it would look like I had a favorite child. So at that moment, I was like, I can't care. I can't care what people think. And that really provided me a lot of comfort and a lot of power.
I love those stories, Julie, because I think we hear, and I will say, like, for all the negatives that there are in social media, in some ways, I kind of wish there was a little bit of social media when I was a new mom, because it maybe would have given me some of that alternative perspective, right? Like, my feed is now beautifully cultivated to be voices that I would like to hear from and that lift me up, which we'll circle back on in a sec. But what I didn't have that then. And so then it was the like, well, is the baby sleeping? Oh, do you soothe them with breast milk? And it was like, it just like called so much into question. I remember during those years that I didn't, it's like, well, the truth is I don't really know what I'm doing. And so I guess, I guess, but it wasn't like where now you can see the theme on social media of like, nobody knows what they're doing, just do the thing, right?
Yeah.
Where that didn't exist for me then. And that's something I kind of wish that I'd had, was to someone to just be like, Jordan, who cares? Like, just do whatever. It's fine.
I totally find it's like a fine line. Like, there's the people who are like, it has to be this way. And then there's a lot of people who are like, hey, whatever works for your family, you know best, but here's some tips. And then there's like the chaotic moms who are like, this is ridiculous. I know what I do, what I'm doing, posting funny memes, which is fun too. Like, right? Like the snarky moms and whatever. Like it's all in good fun. And again, I think you make a good point about curating what works for you. And the people who make you feel like they're being judgy McJudgerson, bye. You don't get a place at the table, So again, curate that list to fit your needs, right?
So how did you actually do it though? Like, I'm curious, so let's circle back to the part where you started a business and you had all these young kids. Like, they're looking back, there must have been some strategies or something that you had done at that time. And maybe that was I'm curious if there was things that you pulled forward from your previous life as a lawyer. Were there things that you just came naturally and intuitive to you as a leader? Like, how did you cultivate this family and business? There must have been some strategies.
Yeah, look, I think actually my number one secret sauce is that I don't take myself all that seriously. At the end of the day, I make labels, I love my job and we do important work and all of that, but I'm not saving lives here. I'm making labels. Again, does not take away the seriousness of my business. And obviously that's true because it wouldn't be where it is right now. This is really important to me. But and same with my kids. My kids are kids like any others. They're going to be fun. I take their education seriously. But at the same time, they're all right. I'm not a helicopter mom. I do things I don't give them cell phones because I don't want them calling me. People are like, oh, well, your kids, what if they're out on a bike ride if they fall off? I'm like, well, get up and walk home or knock on a door. I don't want to rescue them all the time. And I always say today's problem solvers are tomorrow's leaders. And I feel like if I'm giving them the practice now to problem solve, then they'll be able to deal with the big stuff later. And also it allows me to be more productive. If I could spend my whole life chasing these 6 kids around and, bringing them their lunch if they forget it. I don't do that. Go hungry for a day. What do I care? It's one day. Nobody's in scurvy yet. You're fine. If you don't bring your gym clothes, great. You sit out at gym that day. It's a natural consequence. I'm not spending my time chasing them all around and doing these things. I train them to be, fairly independent. Again, not micromanaging them, not micromanaging at work, and perspective is the key. Like my house is messy and I'm okay with that. You could come over right now and I'd be like, yeah, it's messy. That's okay. I'm not, my deathbed, nobody's saying, oh, she made the most beautiful meals and her house was gorgeous, but they will say there are always nachos on the table and I always feel comfortable walking in there, So I think just, my secret sauce really has just been my perspective of not taking myself too seriously. I don't do mom guilt. I always say I gave up mom guilt 4 kids ago. Like if the kids get hot dogs for dinner 2 nights in a row, I'm okay with it. And I think especially through this pandemic, people have to remember we're not our optimal selves here, like we're all on Zoom too much. Our kids are like online schooling, and we're trying to run businesses or work from home or just get kids out of the house and they're still there and they're around all the time and you're used to having the house to yourself to get stuff done, whatever. This is not perfect. So if you're on their screens too much, forgive yourself. It's not going to be forever. If you're ordering takeout too much, who cares? Let's just get through this. And I mean, they're all going to be all right. The kids are all right. We just got to get by, not do the mom guilt thing. It's a complete waste of emotion. It doesn't accomplish anything. Anytime I feel an inkling of it, I'm like, I just have to make a change. And that's what I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's probably, I'm not going to call it easier to make that change, but if it's not like, if you're not inundated by guilt, then those little whispers may be more meaningful, right? It's different if you like feel guilty for everything, like, I took the last yogurt and I'm going to be home 5 minutes late and I didn't get that laundry done. Like, it's hard to discern when you need to make a change if you're feeling guilty about every micro move. Right. Whereas when I could go work out for an hour and a half in the gym, but I probably should spend some time with my kids. I'll listen to that particular mom guilt moment because I don't have it 99% of the time. And so then the 1% of the time I do, I should probably just listen to it.
And you know what? Exactly. Like, I mean, all those things you mentioned, I'm like, oh, no guilt about any of that. No, no shame in that game. But I might do, I do think like working out for an hour every day, if that's what you need to do, that's fine. I don't have that kind of time, honestly. And I know we need to make time for. But I feel like that would take a lot of time away from my family if I spent a whole hour. So instead, guess what? I'm like, we're doing an online workout together, guys. We're going on a hike together. I'm doing a walk. You guys get on your bikes, your rollerblades. Let's go. So I'll try to, incorporate them in things that I want to get done for myself. My goals and my family goals can be the same. And I always say, like, a woman who has big goals outside of her family is the same woman who has big goals within her family.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's such good advice, because you're right. Like, they really are. And what I'm hearing from you, like, so much of like what you identify as filling your cup can actually be done like with your family.
Right. And like, again, and this is, I just got to give that caveat. Like, you have to do, like, if you, like, I've got friends, their mental health depends on them having that hour at the gym, away from their families, away from their work. Mm-hmm. Then you do that. Again, no shame in your game. You know what your self-care is. You do it. If you do that, that makes you better all those other hours of the day, then you do that. You just, again, need to know. And, people are like, well, how, how do you have me time and 6 kids and a business? And I'm like, honestly, if like me time is a super, super top priority for you and you need it, I would actually suggest don't have 6 kids and start a business. Just don't. Like, that just makes no sense. Like, make good choices. 2 kids is plenty. 1 kid is plenty. 1 kid is plenty. 3 kids is plenty. Just do whatever works for you. There's no magic number. I'm not some like superhero. The only reason I could do 6 kids is because my personality is laid back and is chill. And, my mother-in-law once said to me, Julie, you're so lucky you don't care about the state of your house or if your kids are dirty. And I was like, thanks. And she kind of meant it. Like, those are the things that stressed her out. Whereas it not getting caught up in stuff like that gives me freedom to be able to do other things as well. So again, it's all about knowing yourself, knowing what kind of self-care you need and owning it.
I like what you say there, because it's almost like you just can't hold like every single goal in your hand at the same time, right? You can't like have 6 kids, own a massive business, and need a 3-hour nap in the afternoon.
Right.
And right, like and so I think the message there is that like figuring out what does fire up the tank, right? Like what does make women feel well, what makes them feel whole, what, gives them life and purpose, and build it from there, right? Like the idea that they have to do any of those things doesn't need to be there. But we maybe can't do all of those things at the same time.
That's right. And there's no, I mean, we don't want to get into like the hardship Olympics. We don't want to get into like, oh, well, look, if she can do it, why can't I? I have news for y'all. If you've had 2 kids, you've done the hard part. 1 to 2 is the hardest. So you can be like, oh, 6. Believe me, that 6 kid just sat in a little chair with a dummy in for a year and was overstimulated with all the action going on around him. So people are always saying to me, how do you do 6? I can barely manage my 2. You've done the hard part.
So tell me, I want to hear a little bit about just how you feel about your life as like a female entrepreneur. And you do so many things, Julian, contribute like in such a massive way. And also I want to hear about what your future plan is, because I'd like to know what the next version of life looks like for you. But before we hopped on the camera, you said like, one of the things that I really think is important to chat about is kind of the romanticism around owning your own business or entrepreneurship. And I'd love to kind of like dig in on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people, I do a lot of mentoring. I mentor a lot of young women entrepreneurs. And, I think, and just, obviously I belong to a bunch of like organizations and societies and Facebook groups and blah, blah, blah. And I do feel like when people are launching a business, they really romanticize entrepreneurship. And I just think you need to go into it eyes wide open. And it really is like making labels in a basement till 2 a.m. and then getting up and raising children and not getting any money for a really, really, really long time, and nobody knowing anything about your business, and just hitting that pavement and going to every trade show and being on your feet 12 hours while also wearing a baby and feeding that baby through that 12-hour show. Like I remember doing a speaking engagement, and I was a panel, and I spoke and I sat down, and I was 2 weeks after my 6th C-section. I had a baby on stage. I was breastfeeding a baby. Just wasn't glamorous stuff, I'm telling you, but it was fine. You have to go into it, and people always think, what's the number one tip you would tell somebody who's like going into starting a business? And my thing, like if you're a mom or if you have a spouse, would be make sure everybody's going in with eyes wide open, because it is going to be no holidays, no like sitting around watching Netflix, no like date night for a glass of wine when the kids are in bed. It's making labels in the basement after the kids go to bed for 2 years before you're able to pull yourself a little bit of a salary. So it's a hard slog. And if you go into it and your partner or your family doesn't really understand how it's going to impact your life for a couple of years, or forever, then either the business won't work or you'll have some serious consequences in your relationships. And having said that, though, I loved the flexibility that having a business provided. I could go to the apple orchard with the kindergarten class, but it also meant that I was on my laptop at midnight. So, flexibility is great, but it doesn't get your work done for you. You still need to get the work done. And the other thing when it's your business is you want to get it done. You want to be replying to emails right away. You want to reach out to customers. You want to be engaged on social media. You want to do all the things. So it can be very tricky finding those boundaries. And so communicating those boundaries and managing expectations on the home front are very key.
Mm-hmm. You make it sound like a dream. Now everyone's rushing out to start their own business.
And the other thing, not to be a Debbie Downer, is that, there's a lot of serial entrepreneurs out there, because it takes 4 businesses before you make one that sticks, right? So this stuff, especially we're all seeing it through COVID, like the struggle businesses are having. It's really tough. It's heartbreaking to watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We always have kid interruptions in almost every podcast.
That's it. Yeah.
Usually it's mine, actually. So
yeah, I love it.
Nice that it's
But
someone
you know
else's.
what? It's keeping it real, right? That's what we
right.
are. And I had this friend, I thought it was an excellent expression. And when we went in the first lockdown, and it was like, my roots are showing, my roots are showing. Well, also our roots are showing. Our kids are walking into our Zoom meetings. Our dogs are barking in the background. And guess what? I think we've all just become a little more forgiving, a little more real. So yes, indeed, our roots are showing, and maybe that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I know. I said this to my husband last night. We were on a walk. And so our date last night was the kids walking 15 feet in front of us during our walk.
Intimate.
Which we laughed about. We're like, oh my God, we have like alone time. They're like, we almost can't hear them. And I was saying, it's funny, like put this a year ago. And like, so tomorrow I have to take my kids to a outdoor graduation for their school, which I'm very grateful they get to go to. It got rescheduled. They actually weren't able to attend the first date because we're two entrepreneurs and we had a conflict, and we couldn't take our kids to the graduation. And so for as much as there's flexibility, there's also moments where it's like, hey guys, it's family biz. Like, sorry, you're going to miss your school grad and there's nothing we can do about it. Anyways, it got rescheduled for the weather. And so now we get to go, as long as I give a presentation to 200 people from my car on Zoom, which is what we're doing. And I was saying this to Sean yesterday. I was like, I am not worried about this one bit, that I'm going to like virtual background, portable Wi-Fi, Zoom, 200 professionals from my car to pitch an idea. And while the kids are at like their outdoor, social distancing pizza party, I was like, is it because we've let go of things we should let go of, or is it because we no longer care? Is this a good thing, or is this a bad thing?
You know what? It's so funny you say that, because I feel like for, me as like a mom entrepreneur, like I'm used to being highly productive at weird times. Like I say, like moms, we're changing diapers and changing the world at the same time. I did business plans during play dates. I did, shareholders agreement during like all these things. And when COVID hit, I'm like, it's our time to shine. We know how to work at home. We know how to work at weird places. We know how to give keynote speeches from cars at graduation ceremonies. So we got this. We got this, mama.
But you're right. I do think there's key pieces there. And I don't think they're unique just to entrepreneurs, but even for working women during this last year, boundaries have been really difficult, right? Where people don't know what day of the week it is. And so they email you at Friday night at 6 p.m. and then Saturday morning at 7 a.m. and ask why you haven't responded yet, right?
Totally.
Like I think we're struggling a little bit. And so how do you enforce and manage boundaries? Because and I love the Brené Brown, like it's easy to set them, hard to maintain them kind of concept. Like what are your strategies there?
I do think a lot of it is managing expectations. So I try with the kids to do a morning huddle like I would at the office and be like, okay, what do we all have on today? What have we got? So I might be, okay, well, guess what? I've got a TV segment that I'm doing remotely at 1:00. Nobody is on Wi-Fi then. I'm the Wi-Fi hog then. Okay, I can't have anyone stealing any of my juice. So everybody, I don't even care if you're online learning, you're off for that 4-minute segment. Done. So, I always tell parents a great way to go is like have on the door, if your kids are old enough, like a green sticker means come on in, a yellow sticker means like come with caution, be quiet, I might be on a Zoom. Red means your brother better be drinking bleach under the sink, or the house better be burning down, do not come in. So I think, letting them, like having these communication systems. I also am very communicative with the schools, and I tell them what my capabilities are. Like with Finney, I was like, you know what, we'll get the math done, we'll get the spelling test. But, if you think he's doing Bible or if he's doing like phys ed, like he can go in the pool with his siblings. If there's an optional, go to the San Diego Zoo and write about an animal, that ain't happening. So I just told them what my capacity was. He needed a lot of guidance that first lockdown. He's my funny little learner. Luckily, 2 of the kids, my 2 oldest got sent home from university from residence because of COVID last year. So I put every 5 of the older siblings got one subject that they had to manage Finn with. So again, COVID was big families times to shine too, because they could play games together, go in the pool together, play Dungeons and Dragons and whatever. So we were still getting a lot of the social stuff that I know a lot of families were missing out on. So So it's about, managing the expectations, letting the kids, and guess what? If you felt like you were becoming their snack bitch, you don't have to get them snacks all day long, like put some things in place, like, have some little snacks and cups like low so they can help themselves, or close the kitchen, pack them lunches or get them to pack lunches in the morning and say, kitchen's closed. You're done eating. If you finish your entire lunch by 10 a.m., you're done for the day. You know what? You get a lunchbox like you would if you're going to school. So you can do things that, will just help you manage your day and be a little bit more productive.
I love those suggestions. What I'll say to when my kids come down for their breakfast, I'm like, okay, well, what is your plan for eating between now and lunch? Because if you don't take it upstairs with you, you're like, that's it. You're not getting it. And then they'll often be like, well, my plan, mommy, was actually to take a popsicle. And I'm like, well, no. Like, we've got some boundaries. I'm like, choose from this. Like, but you're right. Like and I always use the term infrastructure to describe like when people are trying to work on their health and they feel like they're really flailing, like really like comes down to like infrastructure. You can only send your kids to the snack tray to get a snack if the snacks are in there. Right. And so it often takes like, even though if we want to implement some of those pieces, it actually takes like that reflection on like, well, how would my day get better? You know what? If my kids could just microwave something for lunch, my day would get better. That thing must exist in the house for you to be successful, which means on Sunday, when you go to the grocery store, you actually have to give yourself, like, do the things that your future self will be so grateful for. But it's like when we're spinning our wheels and we're just like operating hour to hour, it's hard to like step above and think about your family structure as a project. Like, I always want people to think about their project managing their health. And I always find it so amazing that women can plan their wedding, like, and then the napkins, this and the this. And then I'm like, what's in your fridge? And they're like, oh, nothing.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is another thing that I do. Like, I have a 4-week rotating meal plan. So Monday to Friday, it's 4 weeks. And you know what? It was also based on like, if Wednesday was a night where everybody played hockey, then Wednesday would be, scrambled eggs and bacon for dinner. And the next Wednesday would be like, maybe
French
salads
toast.
and Caesar salad and French toast, or so on our busier nights, our dinner would reflect that. And then also it helps you do the shopping. And then the other thing it really helps with is not hearing what's for dinner 6 times, because I don't want to hear what's for dinner. I'm like, go to the chart. I'm a big fan of visuals. Their schedules are there. They're color coded. They know where they need to be at what time. They know. So again, if they're like, where am I supposed to? I'm like, go to your chart. I try to always redirect them to an independent solution.
And it sounds like, really, Julie, like all you're doing is treating them, I don't want to call them like not mini adults. That's not the right term, but you're treating them like as independent humans that live in your house, that are incredibly capable of being part of the family structure. And then as a consequence, probably, have a role in like your business, not like maybe in your business, but just like the reason your business is able to be successful is because you've got a self-functioning family unit at home, right?
And I mean, and as well, like this is all in the role modeling too. So if they love being part of this and they love seeing that and them being passionate, and it makes it reflects on them and helps them become that way as well, right? Like I always say, we can talk to our kids till we're blue in the face, but this parenting gig, it's all in the role modeling. You don't want complaining, whining kids. Don't be a complainer. Don't whine. Like I always just say, I act the way I want my children to act.
I like that phrase. It's like kids don't listen, they imitate.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Like I wanted my kids to read, and then I realized like I wasn't really reading either.
Right.
Yeah. And so how could I be like, pick up that novel if I hadn't read a novel like since they ever were born, because they couldn't remember me not reading anything that was not work related. Right.
Totally.
And so
I
love that. What's next for you, Julie? Like I'm curious what your next project is.
Okay, so I'm still with Mabel's Labels full time. I'm doing a lot of I'm like the spokesperson. So I do a lot of, like I said, I do a lot of blogging. I do a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts, a lot of TV stuff. But probably the exciting thing that's going on this year is that I am working with a publisher on a book. So I'm putting together, it should be released by Mother's Day next year. So busy trying to get myself sorted doing that. I'm falling behind already, which seems to be the way it goes. But I'm going to lock myself in the cottage for a few weeks this summer and really get cracking on it. And yeah, I'm super excited about that project.
That's amazing. Are you allowed to tell us what it's about?
Yeah, look, it is going to be about the working title is Managing the Mother Load, Balancing Business, Babies, and Blogging. But I don't know what the title will be, but it will be basically that whole like entrepreneurship, kids, like the thing that I'm really passionate about. And I think, I have the most value to share, right? And it'll be fun, it'll be funny, and it'll be real.
Yeah, I feel like you make such a contribution there. Like it's such a relief, right? To hear like, oh, her house is messy, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
so messy.
like honestly, like that's such a relief, right? It's like if I like post a picture of my burned dinner, people are like, oh, okay, she does it too.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like we don't have a lot of role models for women that are just showing real life. And I think that's what's so attractive about you is that it's just like it is what it is. It's real, right? Like
it really is.
online,
It's
like
messy. Life is messy.
totally and messy.
And you know what? We make mistakes and we learn from it. And we move on and we do better the next time. And that's all we can do. And then we make another mistake. But you know what? The kids, I always say to my kids, oh, I'll make good therapy fodder for you one day. That's it. My goal is to be my kids' therapy fodder.
Well, it won't be about the alone time. We know that.
There you go. There you go. No, exactly. Love it, Jordan.
So just as we wrap up, Julie, I'd love to know what's your big message for women? Like, I feel like, well, I know you have many, and I feel like you have so much to share and covered a lot of ground, like between the actual tasks and things that you have done that have created success for your family. But also I think it's just a relief to hear the perspective that we just don't need to take so many things so seriously. And all 6 of your kids are wonderful, beautiful, turning out fine, right? Like no matter
yeah, they're fine. They're great. And you know what? I would say too, invest when they're little and make sure they're independent, that they have confidence and they're proud. Like, I don't care if my kids, I'm not raising kids to be Olympians or, cure cancer. I just want kids who are happy and self-confident and like who they are. And that to me is that's the biggest gift, because honestly, with the perspective, I always say, when life gives you lemons, make a gin and tonic. Just take it all one day at a time. We're on this earth for however many years, running around in circles. And I always just think, I just don't take it so seriously, because, I think a little far out, think far out. Does it really matter? So do the things that really matter, and the things that don't matter, like what people think or comparing yourself to other people, just try to move away from that. If you have a hard time, just baby steps, practice, just keep practicing at it. And you'll get there.
Mm-hmm. And cultivate I call it a feed, right? Cultivate a newsreel that is reflective of those values too, right? I think that was something kind of important that you hit on there.
Right. There's nothing wrong with hitting block or unfollow. If it's not good, if it's not serving you, it's not helping your mental health, then it doesn't belong in your feed. It doesn't belong in your life. We're allowed to let the toxic stuff out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today, Julie. I so appreciate your perspective. And I love that your voice is the voice that's being shared in all of those blogs, because I think when I think back to my experience of reading parenting blogs, right, it was always to try and find what I thought, well, what's the answer, right? What am I supposed to be doing? But your messaging is so much more about that. Doing what's right for you, doing what's right for your kid, doing what's right for your family, trust your gut, trust your intuition. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's answer. And I feel like that's such a refreshing way for us to lead the next generation of parents. That I hope that they have a more, not that I had a negative experience, but I hope that they don't black out for the first 4 years and maybe don't remember what's going on. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to find me or check out Mabel's Labels, it's mabelslabels.com. And I'm on all the social things, but you can find me at mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole.
Yes. And we will put the links to all of those things. And I highly recommend you go follow Julie on Instagram too. But we will put all of those links to all those things there so that we can check out your articles. So thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Jordan. And thanks, listeners. I'm glad you joined us today.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Women's Health Unplugged. My goal is to help you feel more confident about your health. Please remember that what we talked about today in the podcast does not constitute medical advice, nor was a doctor-patient relationship formed. If you have questions about your healthcare or about how today's topic pertains to you, please take it up with your family doctor, your specialist, or someone on your health team.